Okay, so sorry guys, I just got word that the audio wasn't audible earlier on. So I'll just repeat the steps and the explanation one more time so that we all can be carried along. Now earlier on, we spoke about adding spaces at the top and at the bottom of our image. Because currently, if you take a look at the result, there's no space at the top and there's no space at the bottom of this image to separate the logo from the rest of the form. And we will need to add a lot of space. And to do that, we need to take a look at our structure. Now this is the Lockstar logo and we want to add a space around. Remember, we said margin is the space around an element, but padding is the space inside an element, and now we want to add a space around. So we are going to be using a margin, as well as picking the class name image as a CSS selector to select this exact image. To do that, right here, I use a dot notation to indicate classes, and I write image, which refers to that image in our HTML. Now I can add margin at the top, and I want that to be 30 pixels. I could also add margin at the bottom, and I also want that to be 40 pixels. Take a look. Now we have a lot of space at the top and a lot of space at the bottom as well. But one thing we can also do is, instead of specifying margin top different from margin at the bottom, we could simply use a property called margin, and specify both values, both margin top and margin bottom, right here, separating them with a space. Now the very first value is the value of the margin at the top, and that is 30 pixels. Now we leave a space. Now the second value will be the value at the right hand side of our margin, and that was 0. Now the next value, which is the third value, is the value of the margin at the bottom, and that was 40 pixels. And the final value, as you can guess, is the value of margin at the left. That's 0 as well. Now let's take a look. As you can see, we have the exact same amount of space. If you still are confused by what we are able to do so far, please do not forget to leave a questions down in the comments section below, and we'll always do well to get back to you. Next, I believe it's time to style our input fields. And looking at it, I believe we can do a lot with the size. It's too small, and we could do a lot of work with the size. Now, let us increase the size of our input field. And yes, you can guess what we need to do. Pretty simple. First step again would be to go straight back to our HTML, pay attention to the structure, and pick out the selector we want to affect. Now, back at the HTML, I want to affect these selectors. Now remember, these are the input fields we see in our form, and they all have the same tag, input. Let's take a look. As you can see, all the input fields have exactly the same style. So one thing we can do is either assign the same IDs or the same class names to all input fields and style that ID or class once and for all. But then again, we already have a selector that covers all four. And as you can guess, it is the input selector. So if I select the input in CSS, I would be referring to all 4 inputs that I have here. Take a look. First, let's increase the width and height of our inputs. And to do that, I can simply write the selector input without a period sign, because this is simply a tag. I'm selecting a tag this time, not a class, not an ID, but a tag. Now I can assign a width property to my input, and let's make the width, say, 300 pixels. Now let's see what 300 pixels would look like. Notice how the 300 pixels affects all the inputs at once. Now let's increase the height. Now the height of our input should be, say, 20 pixels. And again, you can see how it affected the height. But I believe we need a bit more space, say 25 pixels of height. Now these values are not a given. You can play around with the values. And I think 25 pixels is just perfect. One more thing we need to do is give a lot of space between the fields. The full name, email, password, and confirm password fields, they are rightly close together, and we want them properly spaced out. And again, we need to do that in our CSS. Still in the input selector, I can add margin to the bottom. I already added margin to the top, so I'm sure the very first input field is properly spaced. But if I add margins to the bottom, it means others would also be properly spaced. And guess what? It will also affect the button, so the button will be properly spaced evenly. Now I'm just going to add margin at the bottom. I'm going to add a margin of, say, 20 pixels. Now these values are not constant. You could also change them to get the desired result. There we go. Now 20 pixels of margin seems perfect. Another step we need to do before we go on to styling the button would be to add curved edges or curvatures to our inputs, just the same way we had it in our design. And yes, those curvatures in CSS are known as border radius. Now the border radius also has values in pixels, and I'm going to say maybe 10 pixels. Let's see what 10 pixels look like. 10 pixels is a lot, so let's say 5 pixels. Hmm. 5 is too small, say 8. Now this looks a whole lot better. Looks a whole lot better. Now let's move on to styling the buttons. But before we do that, I believe we can still do something about the height of the inputs. Just adjust the height, say make the height 30 pixels instead of 25. 30 pixels. Good. Looking good. Now in the same way, let's style our button. And this should be a lot easier because we already have values for width and height. I mean, they all have the same values for width and height. Just some slight difference that shouldn't take much to fix. So to style the button, again, let's take a look at our HTML. Now we have a button tag that says create account. All we need to do is select that button, and I can use any selector, but I want to use the button as a selector. Select the button, and I'm going to give it a defined width and height. You already see the width and height of 30 pixels and 300 pixels. So I'm going to say width of 300 pixels and a height of, you can guess what, 30 pixels. Let's see what this looks like now. Great. And now let's add those curvatures. And those curvatures are referred to as border radius, and we had a value of 8 pixels earlier, so we just need to repeat the same thing. Border radius 8 pixels. Great. Perfect. Now we can begin to add more styles to the button. And the first style we want to add would be the background color. That background color was purple. So let's add the background color to my button. And you can guess it's called background color and it's purple. Okay. Plum. Let's see. Great. That's the exact color we were looking for. Plum. And I have to take out the outlines for this button because I don't want them, so I'll just take out the outlines by specifying a property called outline, and I want to say none. I don't want any outlines at all. Yep, my outlines are gone. Perfect. Final step for the button would be to change the color of the text. Notice the text here is black, but the text we have in our design was white. And as you could guess again, changing the color of the text is also very easy. All we need to do is go back to our CSS, and still in the button we can specify the color property and make it white. There we go. Now you have it. It is white, just like we had wanted. And final step, we have a bit of text that says, by clicking create account, you agree to our terms and privacy policy. So let us add that, and notice how terms privacy policy are bold. So we're also going to factor that in. We'll do that in our HTML. So we'll go straight back here, and just underneath the button we'll be having a paragraph tag that says, by clicking create account, you have agreed to our terms. Now notice the word terms, T-E-R-M-S, was bold, and to do that we could have various tags. So we could use the B tag. This is one way of writing the word terms, but the word and wasn't. So alright, and outside, and again privacy policy was bold. So when I want to make the text bold, I'm just going to do this, and privacy policy. Now let's take a look at our results. Can you see? Looking good, except we also need to make the text color white. So to make that white, I have to style the paragraph tag. So I'll go to the styles, and for the P tag, I'm going to have color white. Now this is black, white. Perfect. Now you see what this looks like. Let's see if we have to break it by clicking to agree. You agree to our terms and privacy. So at the point it says we have to break it. Yeah, good. So at the point it says our, we have to break it. So that's why the break tag here, the R. Now a break tag, like we explained earlier, helps us move to the next line, move the next words to the next line. Now, as you can see here, terms and privacy policy are now on the next line, the exact same way we wanted them to appear. Now, this is the end result of our HTML and CSS form. Also, it's important to note one final thing, that when we are creating a registration or login form, we must use a form tag. Now, the form tag helps us to do a lot of things, but key among them is redirections. Now, whenever I fill this form and I want to be redirected to a new page that says maybe thank you for filling the form, let's see how to do that. I could easily have a new HTML file that says thanks.html, and as you know, I have to generate the boilerplate. And right here, let me just have a text that says thank you for submitting. Okay. Now, whenever I click on create account, I should see the text thank you for submitting. Right now, that doesn't work. Let me flourish. Let me try to fill the form. Flourish. Okay. And password should be now. If I click on create account, it shouldn't do anything. Notice it does absolutely nothing. But my intention would be for it to take me to a different page that says thank you for submitting. And to do that, all I need to do is back at the form, I need to specify some things. I need to specify some things. Now I need to add the form tag here. Form tag. I believe I must have deleted that. Yep. I must have deleted this erroneously. Great. Let's see. Okay. Still works perfect. Great. Now, all we need to do is in this action attribute. Now, all this text in teal color are called called attributes rather. Now, the action attributes in a form tag helps you specify the next steps after you must have submitted. Now in this case, I wanted to redirect us to a new HTML page. Say thanks.html. Now let's see. Let me fill the form again. I'll say John Doe. Email. Let me fill the password. Now you see, now because I was able to specify correct action attributes, it takes me to the form, to the thank you page that says thank you for submitting. That is why it is very important to always remember whenever you're creating input field for registrations or signing in or logging in, please always use a form tag. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave your questions down in the comment section below, and we would do well to get back with answers. Now, we have successfully completed the task. But an important question comes to mind. how do I get to share my project with others? I can't always carry my computer along with me everywhere because it's heavy, and I want to share my results with others. Well, that's where the word hosting comes into play. So hosting is like paying the annual rent for a shop, a physical store, a physical shop. So for us in the tech space, the shop rent is equal to hosting. Okay, so if you pay for your hosting, then you can get your websites live. You must have paid for a store for your website, but there are also very free alternatives, one of which we're going to be using today, and that is called Netlify. I already have a Netlify account, so I'm just going to be signing in. Now for those of us watching, if you don't have a Netlify account and you want to follow up, please do well to create a Netlify account. Now I'm going to go to Netlify. Netlify. Great. Netlify.com. That is the name of our website. And I will be logging in. Now, I'm logging in because I already have an account. For those of us that don't have, please feel free to sign up. But I'll be logging in. Let's wait a second. Now, Netlify is an example of a web hosting provider, a web host manager. And you can log in with various options, but I already have a GitHub account. I'll be logging with GitHub. One. Great. Now I'm logged in. Now I'm logged in. In order for us to actually host our website and put them live online, available for everybody in the whole world to see, what we need to do is click on this section that says add new site. Now what this means is add new sites to the hosting platform. So I'm going to click on that. Now there are various ways. If I have a GitHub account, I can simply click on import an existing project. An existing project simply means you have your code saved on GitHub instead of your local machine. Or I can also deploy manually. Now deploy manually means it's not saved on GitHub, but I have the files on my local machine. So I'm going to click on deploy manually. Now as you can see, the instruction says drag and drop your site's output folder here. Now let's go look for our site's output folder. It's called form. And here we have it, form. We need to drag and drop this folder right into Netlify. Now, important thing to note as well is, in as much as we're free to name our HTML and CSS files anything we want, anything we can choose, it's also important to note that the very first page for your HTML should be called index. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for your hosting providers to understand the structure of your folder. So we need to make sure that it is called index. I already have my first page called index, so I'm very good to go. Now all I need to do is upload that folder here, and the folder is on my desktop. And you can see one of the reasons why I say it's really easy for me to save folders or on my desktop. I have form, I click on upload, and I wait for the upload to be complete. Perfect. Now upload is done, everything working perfectly fine. Now we have actually deployed this website already, but you might want to ask, what about the link you spoke about? Well, let's click on site overview and see if we have that link. I'm sure you can see the link now. If you pay attention, this is it. But just so we can understand how interesting this is. Let's click on this, and there you have it, the same project we worked on earlier. Now if I share this link to anybody anywhere in the world, that person will be able to see this project. And that's the essence of having a hosting and a domain. Well, a domain is simply the name of our website. If you want to learn more about this, not to worry, you can subscribe, turn on the notification bell, so that whenever we're having programs like this, you'll be the first to know. Again, one final thing is, if you're not comfortable with the name, you can actually edit that name. If you click on site configurations, there's an option here that says change site name. I'll click on this, and now I can change the site name. I'm going to call this forms.netlify.app, and I click on save. Oh, it says the name is already taken. Forms test. Then click on save. Name is already taken. Let me say test. Test. Wow, already taken. I'll probably give it a different name. Word name. Word form.netlify.app. So this should be available. Yes, it is. Now we've successfully changed the name of our form from whatever that was to weirdform.netlify.app. Now let's test it and see if it works. Alright, word form dot netlify dot app. Enter. There we have it. Again, we have successfully completed the project as well as hosting it. Now, just for practice, feel free to repeat this hosting process with the first project we did. Now remember, we had a project earlier where we worked on the travel agency landing page. Now it will be interesting to see us host that travel agency landing page, and I would love to get your feedbacks if you were able to do it, and if you were, we would also love to see your links, the links to your project. Okay? Now not to worry, feel free to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. Turn on the notification bell as well, so that whenever we have a new program like this or going live like this, you would be the first to know. Now, thank you guys for staying tuned and joining this live session. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned a thing or two. It's nice having you guys for the live session, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now, and I'll see you tomorrow.